Hey, beautiful souls. It's Friday Night VIVE and Happy New Year. If you're joining me live, I'm so glad you're here. And if you're catching the replay, just know this message found you right on time. Before we dive in, take a second and tell me where you're tuning in from tonight. Drop your city in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's coming in from. Now, tonight's VIVE is called From Survival to Freedom. And I want to be clear about what this is and what it isn't. This isn't about fixing your life. It's not about becoming a better version of yourself. And it's not about pushing harder or doing more. It's about something quieter. It's about what changes when you stop managing life just to get through it and start noticing where you're still bracing, even when things look fine on the outside. We're not talking about going from broken to healed or struggling to thriving. We're talking about the shift from survival, where we do what's necessary, tolerable, and expected, to freedom, where we choose what actually feels aligned, honest, and true. So come as you are tonight. You don't need clarity or all the answers, just presence. Let's breathe together and let's get started. I'll start here. For a long time, I thought survival meant strength. I thought if I could keep going, keep managing, keep showing up, then I was doing life right. Now pause for a moment. Does that resonate with you? Survival doesn't always look like chaos. Sometimes survival looks like competence. It looks like being reliable, being productive, being the one who always figures it out. Survival says, I can handle this, even when handling it costs you more than you admit. And the tricky part, survival works. It gets you through. It helps you endure seasons that require grit. It builds resilience. But here's the quiet truth most of us don't talk about. Just because you can survive something doesn't mean you're meant to live there forever. There comes a moment, and it's subtle, when surviving stops feeling noble and starts feeling heavy, not dramatic, not explosive, just tiring, not the shift from broken to healed, not from struggling to thriving, but the shift from survival to freedom. And freedom, in this sense, isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or bold declarations. Freedom shows up as a question, and a quiet one at that. Why am I still bracing? Bracing for the next demand, the next disappointment, bracing for the next thing that needs managing. Survival trains us to brace, to anticipate, to prepare for impact, and to stay ready. For a while, that readiness feels like strength, but over time, it becomes a posture you forget you're holding until one day, something small happens. Nothing catastrophic, nothing major. You just notice that getting through isn't enough anymore. You're not unhappy, but you're not at ease. You're not failing, but you're not free. And that realization can be unsettling because if you're not surviving anymore, what are you supposed to be doing? Here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. Freedom often arrives disguised as discomfort, not because something is wrong, but because something is changing. Survival patterns are familiar. Freedom requires choice, and choice is vulnerable. Survival says, this is what's expected, this is tolerable, and this is what I know how to manage. Freedom asks, does this align? Is this honest? Or is this still mine? Those are harder questions because once you ask them, you can't unsee the answers. And that's where many people pause, not because they're afraid, but because freedom carries responsibility. When you stop surviving, you stop outsourcing your life to obligations, expectations, and endurance. You begin choosing, and choosing doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes choosing looks like saying no without a long explanation, letting go of what once made you feel strong, or admitting that something you mastered no longer fits. That can feel like loss. And yes, there is grief in outgrowing survival, grief for the version of you who held it all together, who endured quietly, and who stayed when leaving wasn't an option. Honor that version. But don't mistake gratitude for obligation. You are allowed to move on without making survival your permanent identity. Freedom isn't about fixing your life. It's about noticing where you're still bracing and asking what might be possible if you didn't have to. Freedom doesn't require bold moves, just honest ones. And honesty is quiet, it's internal, it's deeply personal. It might sound like, I don't want to live like this anymore, even if everything looks fine on the outside. It doesn't mean you're ungrateful, it means you're awake. This is the moment many of us are in, whether we have language for it or not. We're not falling apart and we're not rising dramatically. We're just standing at the edge of a different way of living. And tonight, I want you to hear this clearly. Nothing is wrong with wanting more ease or with you being done with survival, and nothing needs to be rushed. Freedom unfolds gently when you give yourself permission to stop bracing. So if you're in that quiet in between, where endurance no longer satisfies, but clarity hasn't fully landed yet, you're not lost, you're transitioning. And that, my beautiful soul, is not weakness. It's the beginning of freedom. Whew! All right, it's time for our regular segment, the Vive Exchange. Let's talk about it. This is where we pause the story and take a look at what's stirring hearts and sparking reflection. The conversations, the moments, the energy that makes us stop and think. I came across something this week that stopped me. The message was simple but heavy. It said, live like you're 73. And the question underneath it was this: if you died tomorrow, would you be satisfied with the life you've lived so far? Not impressed with your life and not proud on paper, but satisfied? And that question hit me, not in a scary way, but in a clarifying way. Because most of us aren't living badly, we're just living later. Later, I'll rest. Later, I'll travel. Later, I'll say no. Or later, I'll choose myself. You know that survival logic? Survival says just get through this season. But freedom asks, why am I still waiting? What actually struck me about that message wasn't the age, it was the awareness. When people reach the latter years of life, they don't usually regret what they did wrong. They regret what they postponed, the conversations they didn't have, the ease they didn't allow, the life they kept putting on hold. And here's the connection to tonight. You don't need to be 73 to live with clarity. You just need to stop assuming you have to endure first and live later. That's the survival to freedom shift, not panic, not pressure, just honesty. If that question made you pause, type truth in the comments. I want to offer you one small practice you can carry with you this week. Nothing complicated or nothing you need to perfect, just a check-in. Here's the question: am I choosing this because it aligns or because I know how to survive it? That's it. Survival choices are familiar. They sound like, I can handle this. It's not ideal, but it's fine. I've done harder things than this. Freedom choices sound quieter. They don't justify themselves as much. They sound like, this doesn't feel honest anymore. I don't want to brace for this, or just because I can doesn't mean I want to or have to. And here's the important part. This is not about changing everything. It's about noticing. Notice where your body tightens or where you sigh before you answer. Also take notice for when you're enduring instead of choosing. Noticing is the work, because freedom doesn't usually begin with action. It begins with awareness. So this week, when something shows up, a decision, a request, or a familiar pattern, pause and ask yourself, is this survival or is this freedom? You don't have to fix it or decide anything yet. Just name it. because once you can name it, you're no longer stuck inside of it. If you're open to practicing this, type ready in the comments. Here's the reframe I want you to hold tonight. Survival isn't wrong. It's not something to regret. It's a season that served you, a season that teaches you how to endure, how to adapt, and how to keep going when stopping isn't an option. But freedom isn't the opposite of survival. It's what comes after survival has done its job. So if things feel uncomfortable right now, that doesn't mean you're confused. It means you're transitioning. Survival asks, what do I need to get through this? Whereas freedom asks, what do I need to feel at ease with myself? Those questions lead to different lives. And here's what matters most. You don't need a breakdown to leave survival, and you don't need proof that it was bad enough. Wanting more ease is reason enough. Freedom doesn't require bold moves. It asks for honest ones. So if life feels quieter, less urgent, less dramatic, that's not stagnation. That's regulation. That's what it feels like when your nervous system realizes it doesn't have to stay on guard anymore. And that's the truth. You're not behind. You're not lost. You're just done surviving and beginning to choose differently. Take a deep breath with me. If it feels right, let your shoulders soften and unclench your jaw and let your body know it doesn't have to brace right now. Here's the affirmation I want to offer you tonight. I release survival and I no longer live in constant readiness. I allow ease without guilt. I choose freedom, not loudly, not forcefully, but honestly. I trust that I don't need to endure what no longer aligns. I am allowed to choose what feels true, and I am allowed to rest inside my own life. Now let that land. If you're claiming this for yourself tonight, type yes in the comments. Thank you for being here with me tonight. This was Friday Night VIVE, from survival to freedom. Remember, this isn't about doing more or pushing harder. It's about noticing where you no longer need to brace and allowing yourself to choose with honesty and ease. Protect your energy, stay present with what's unfolding, and trust this truth. Releasing survival isn't giving up, it's making space for freedom. I'm so grateful you shared this moment with me tonight.